Thank you and good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Toastmasters Lunch and Learn series for District 3. My name is Lisa Raymond. I am your co-host today for the Lunch and Learn series. I'd like to tell you a little bit now about our presenter, Christy Abrams. She is the hard of hearing specialist with the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing. Since July of 2019, she has been a charter member of Audible Talkers Toastmasters. She serves as the Sergeant at Arms for this club, which is the first in the world to be accessible to its hard of hearing members. Christy grew up in Norwich, which is a small town in upstate New York. She attended college at the State University of New York at Plattsburgh, majoring in human services. She has worked in the field for more than 25 years. Christy is passionate about hearing loss, effective communication, and equal access. She has been navigating a severe bilateral hearing loss since first grade and currently wears 2 behind the ear or BTE power hearing aids. She lives in the Northwest Valley of Phoenix with her teenage daughter, Nora, and their 2 kittens. Oh, we got to see a picture of them at some point. Christy loves road trips, and her favorite escape is reading books and watching movies with closed captions with her dear dad. Now, for her presentation today, did you know that hearing loss is the #1 disability in the world? I certainly didn't. So with this Lunch and Learn, you will experience firsthand what hearing loss sounds like, discover the benefits of communication strategies, and develop a greater sense of empathy, understanding, and compassion of how hearing loss impacts communication. The majority of people either know someone coping with a hearing loss or are navigating hearing loss themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce you to Christy Abrams.
Okay, I'm so happy to be here with all of you today. Like Lisa said, this really is a great passion of mine. My job does not really feel like work to me. It's just such a privilege to be in this position and to basically help others all day long who are navigating hearing loss just like myself. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our next slide, please. So first things first, I know Lisa mentioned that, but I'm hoping, since we are all about communication and presenting here at Toastmasters, we want to think in our audience, most likely there will be someone out there who has some level of hearing loss. So we want to make sure that we have captions, whether it be today we have the honor of having a real live cart captioner with us, or if it's just the automatic captions on. So today, like I said, we have communication, access, real-time translation. We call it CART. It's the best kept secret in the world, I think. CART is captioning or word-for-word instant speech-to-text translation provided on scene in just about any venue. A highly professionally trained and certified CART provider or stenographer listens to what is being said and then types on a machine, just like you would see in the courtroom. And then we have this beautiful captioning that's very accurate. The CART provider can be on site, can be remote, or even assigned in Zoom or other virtual platforms. And the CART provider will type everything heard, including environmental sounds, indicating a change in speaker and audience reactions. So it's the gold standard, and we're lucky to have it here today. All right, next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of what it looks like, and I have another slide on CART because it really is something that's so important to know about. Many of us may also have a friend that's in the deaf culture, so we all know and maybe have seen American Sign Language and interpreters, but CART is something that hard of hearing people use to have that access. So I really hope that people will take this away and spread the word on it. CART versus automatic speech recognition, or ASR. It is important to understand there's a difference here. With ASR, it's not always accurate as CART. For example, with the artificial intelligence, the captions may say hard of hearing instead of hard of hearing. And sometimes it's funny. And so we all get a chuckle out of the, sometimes we'll call it craptions, but it's not always funny. And it wouldn't be funny at all if you were with a lawyer in a very important meeting, or if you were in a medical appointment and you need those captions to be accurate. So that's really important to know. So also I want you to think about when you're presenting in Toastmasters, or if you're at work on Zoom, even if you think no one in the meeting needs closed caption or live transcripts, enable them anyway so they have that choice, because 1 in 5 people experience some degree of hearing loss. In the photos here, you will see in the bottom left-hand corner, back when we were all in person, CART may look like this. We would have an audience and a presentation, and the CART provider can bring their screen and do captioning that way. In the upper left-hand corner, you'll see what the steno machine, the machine looks like, just like you would see in a courtroom. In the bottom right, this is really important, because this is, it could be your phone, a smartphone, or an iPad. So you can even request CART for medical appointments. If you're hard of hearing, that is your right to have that access. And so the CART captioner would be providing those captions remotely. And then in the upper right-hand corner, we actually have a lady here in a beautiful yellow shirt, and she actually has combined vision and hearing loss, or is deafblind, I believe. She is sitting next to the CART captioner, and she is receiving information through her Braille reader. So it's just a wonderful thing. And again, so many people will say, CART, what is that? I've never heard of it. So it's great to know about, and I hope that you will spread the word. Okay, next slide, please. So I like to start off the presentation a little bit on my story. This is a picture of me when I was 6 years old. And this is not actually my classroom, but honestly, my classroom looked just like this when I was in first grade. And so back between kindergarten and first grade, I had some type of illness. It was a virus. I was hospitalized. I had a high fever, and they really never gave a name to the virus. I know that I was given strong medication and was in the hospital for longer than a week. And everyone thought I recovered and was doing okay, and I was sent on my way to first grade. Back then, my last name started with W, so it would have it that I always seemed to find myself sitting in the last row of the classroom, and I could see all of my classmates just like this in front of me, everyone at their own little individual desk, and we're excited to be in first grade, right? And my teacher, I remember my teacher looked just like Carol Brady. I just thought she was so pretty, and she was standing in front of the giant dark green chalkboard, right? Because they had chalkboards back then. And I was just watching, and all of a sudden, in unison, every other classmate except for me opened their little desk, and they took out paper and pen, and they started to write. And I still can feel those feelings. I remember just looking around and thinking, how did everyone know to do that? What am I supposed to be doing? I felt completely, I think, baffled and lost and a little bit stunned. I looked over at my teacher, and her eyebrows were knitted a little bit, and she was giving me a little bit of a stern look, which broke my heart because I thought she was so pretty. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, and I don't even know why. Well, I didn't hear the direction that she had given to please take out a piece of paper and a pencil and write your name. So that was the beginning of my journey of feeling a little bit lost. And it took a good part of that classroom year, that first grade year, before my family, actually my great grandmother, discovered that I was not hearing. And I actually had severe bilateral hearing loss. So I'll tell you a little bit more about what that means and how that impacts me and other people that may have some degree of hearing loss. Okay, next slide, please. So it's important to know hearing loss in our great state of Arizona, right? We have over 1.1 million hard of hearing folks here in Arizona. of this 1.1 million, there are 20,000 Arizonans who are culturally deaf. So those folks, I'm privileged to work with several colleagues here that are deaf and among the deaf culture, and they use American Sign Language. But on top of that, the 1.1 million are hard of hearing, and most of us do not use American Sign Language. The majority of us do not. So other important numbers I want you to think about is for every birth, 2.4 out of every 1,000 babies are born with some level of hearing loss. So that's really significant. And then as people age, we're looking at 739,000 Arizonans over the age of 60 are hard of hearing. So that's a really big number. Another number that you might find surprising is 20% of teenagers have some degree of hearing loss. And you think, what, teenagers? Why would that be? And that number's on the rise. And we think about, what do teenagers do? I know my own daughter, she has her AirPods and they fit snugly in her ear and very close to her eardrum. And I try to have her keep her music low, but of course, teenagers love to play their music at a great volume there. And so that sound is not escaping. And so that loud sound is giving our teenagers hearing loss as well. So these numbers are pretty important to know about. And again, just to keep in mind, I'm sure all of you today know someone that has hearing loss. Okay, next slide, please. So a guide to terminology. So I mentioned the deaf culture, and deaf, or the word deaf, is typically used to describe people who identify as culturally deaf and are actively engaged within the deaf community. We also have a group of people who may be deafblind or have a combined vision and hearing loss. And this prevents access to communication and in the environment to people. So other terms for deafblindness include dual sensory impairment, as I said, combined vision and hearing loss. And also some people spell the word deafblind with a hyphen, so just different ways of saying that. And then we have hard of hearing. And hard of hearing is a widely accepted term to describe someone who may have mild, moderate, or severe hearing loss. And often this is developed, it could be developed during childhood like myself, or often later in life. So hard of hearing people have developed spoken language, may wear hearing aids or cochlear implants, and in most cases have not learned American Sign Language. A lot of times there's a misunderstanding about that. There's another term that's out there that you'll hear, and it's out there, we read it and we hear it, and that is hearing impaired. And here at the Commission, that is not a term that we use. It is a term that can be offensive. It sounds impaired, as if something's broken. I heard it a lot growing up. So you kind of start to internalize you're impaired. So we're trying to think about terminology and what to use. That's not the term that we choose to use. So, all right, next slide. Thank you. So hearing loss is an invisible disability. If you saw me in a meeting or out in the street, I mean, my hair is longer, so you can't really see my hearing aids. And you may have no idea that I'm hard of hearing. And that is so often the case, unless someone has really short hair or you see their cochlear implant. We don't know when someone's hard of hearing. And unfortunately, many people who are hard of hearing don't wear any devices. They need them, but they don't have them. So that's important to know. So it is an invisible disability. There are various degrees of loss. Mild hearing loss, at this point, the person may not even be aware of it. Their spouse and their family and their coworkers may be aware of it, but as a hard of hearing person, we don't know what we don't hear. We don't realize what we're missing. So a lot of times the spouse may say, the TV is too loud, or I asked you from the kitchen, you didn't say anything or respond, or I told you that yesterday, don't you remember? So those things start to happen. in a mild hearing loss. And then once someone has a moderate hearing loss, hopefully, if we start to recognize it, we will start to use hearing aids or other assistive devices, because that's really important to help keep our brain healthy. But like I said, so many people put it off and don't always use hearing aids when they need to. Severe hearing loss is more my hearing loss. At this point, the sounds of speech are difficult to understand, even with hearing aids. And that is true. So I have power hearing aids on right now, but I still have the pleasure of having Cart here today and having the captions and being able to refer to them if you ask me questions or if I need to interact with anybody. I have that effective communication and equal access. So it's a wonderful thing. For profound hearing loss, hearing aids may help with environmental sounds, but they're not going to bring in the clarity of speech. Once you have a profound hearing loss, it's just too advanced. So that's important to know. And to take note, glasses, we put on our glasses, and I wear contact lenses, right? I see perfectly, probably better than 20/20 with my contact lenses. But it's not the case with my hearing aids. My hearing aids help a lot, but I still need other communication strategies. I still need to advocate for myself and let people know, because that really helps. Another important thing that makes an impact is pitch and tone, which affect someone's comprehension. So I know right away if I'm on the phone and I call someone, and if I get a gentleman with a nice deep voice and a good pace, I'm going to do great. I'm going to probably hear him very well. I hear vowels well and lower sounds very well, but I don't hear those higher frequencies, which are our consonants. And so for women who may speak softer and have higher voices, if I have someone like that on the phone, I'm going to be like, uh-oh. If I don't have my INO caption on my phone, it's going to be a little bit more of a struggle for me to understand what someone's saying without seeing their face. So definitely pitch and tone effect. Yeah. So the next slide, I hope this sticks with you. This is really important. Lighting affects communication. So if this may be my doctor and I'm in their office and I am looking at them and I'm wanting to have a conversation, this is going to bring up all sorts of feelings for me. Now that I'm at the commission, I'm really good at advocating. But back in my past, I might have not said, doctor, I can't see your face. You're in a shadow. I need you to do X, Y, Z. I have learned those strategies over time, but most hard of hearing people don't have those strategies. And not only that, they have a lot of feelings. They might feel just uncomfortable or embarrassed. They don't know what to do, how to make a situation work, how to get that communication. And they walk into a situation like this. This might be a restaurant and you're trying to talk with your friend and there's a window behind them and there's a shadow across the face. This may be someone on a Zoom screen. So just something as important as lighting makes a big difference. We need to see someone's face. So that's good to remember. Okay, next slide, please. So how is your Zoom screen? I want to ask everybody about that. Now that many of us, I know a lot of maybe Toastmasters, maybe you're back in person, but I know at Audible Talkers Toastmasters, we are online, and I actually just love it because we do have captioning and everybody goes one at a time. And we're open to everyone, hearing or hard of hearing. We have people from all over the world participate, but it's really important for people to be mindful of their own Zoom screen. So are you presenting? Is your camera on? I can't tell you, I've attended many presentations where there'll be a PowerPoint, but the speaker will have their camera off because they don't realize how crucial it is for someone to also see their face. Sometimes I'll send a chat and they'll say, well, that's okay because you have captions. But growing up hard of hearing, I learned to lip read quite well. That doesn't mean I get everything, but it helps me to process information. There's so much information on the human face, not only the speech sounds, but emotions. So I really depend on that. And so I think it's really important if you're presenting to have your camera on and to make sure that your mouth is easy to see and to think about your virtual background. Some of the virtual backgrounds are great. They're very calm and simple colors, but I've seen some that are like fireworks and they move. And when you move in and out, that can be very fatiguing for people that are hard of hearing because we're visually focusing on the presenter and trying to glean as much information as we can off of their face. So if there's other distractions going on behind, that can make our brains even more tired. So it's important to think about virtual backgrounds and what it is. And if you're moving in and out and it's obstructing your face, just be aware of that. Thinking about if there's a shadow on your face. Is there a hand covering your mouth? Are you thinking like this? And maybe some people do that, they're not even aware of it. Or maybe they have a pen in front of their mouth and they're just thinking about it when they're talking. And that can be another barrier for hard of hearing folks too. Sometimes your camera might be on one monitor, but you're reading notes from over here and you're facing the other direction. And that can be an issue as well. So, or some people might be looking down and talking like this. Maybe they're looking at their notes. You know, I know sometimes we need to do that, but once we lose that base, it can be really difficult. So I had an idea, and I'm going to show you on the next slide. We came up with a little fun slide. We were in a meeting the other day, and we were talking about what do people do in Zoom meetings that create a barrier or make it more difficult for hard of hearing or deaf or really anybody to follow along. So just thinking about how's your Zoom screen? What are the best practices or worst practices? So Julie here, she's kind of just sitting back and she's pretending to be sleeping, but just even not having a face. Carmen is showing that she's on the wrong camera monitor. Becca is looking down again at her notes, and that makes it really hard for hard of hearing people to follow along. I love Michelle's. Michelle's is half face. We've all seen this, right? I don't know if people can't see themselves, but it's something to really be aware of and to check out when you're on Zoom to make sure that your camera is good and that your mouth is not hidden. I'm on there. I'm kind of being funny. I have my phone in front of my mouth, but we've all seen this. People, maybe they have a message and they bring their phone up and they're just, doing a quick chat or something, and maybe they're talking, and that's another challenge. Dustin is eating an apple. That makes it hard. And then we have here the window glare. So just thinking about that, and it can create a shadow. So I hope you'll, just if you're presenting, make sure again that your camera's on with your PowerPoint. All right, next slide, please. So what I want to show you next is this is the Starkey hearing loss simulator. And I want to tell you a little bit about it before we go through it. This is a link that you can click on. And if you have a family member or friends or coworker that has hearing loss, you can definitely tell them about this link here. We can even put it in the chat at the end. And we're going to walk you through so that you can experience what it's like to have hearing loss. So first in this link, when you go on, you choose your situation. You can choose a conversation, a meeting, a restaurant, shopping, music, a crowd. The car is the worst for me. And my poor teenage daughter, when I'm driving, I don't want to look over at her, but it can be very frustrating to hear in the car. Then the next area, you can select, go through normal, mild, moderate, and severe hearing loss and play what it sounds like. And I'm going to do this. I just want to tell you a little bit about how this works. And then below, also, the hearing loss simulation visually demonstrate missing sounds of speech, because I think I had just mentioned before, I don't hear consonants very well. I hear vowels great, but I don't hear consonants. So you can see what's happening. And then I'm going to ask the cart provider during this slide, they can take a rest and they don't have to do cart. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to click on meeting and we're going to go through and click on normal and push play.
Yeah, because we got a lot of restriping to do.
Yep.
We've got some repairs to
And-
do from the winter.
Give him a call, ask him if he would get in there February 15th.
I'll do that.
Will do.
Oh, that sounds good. That'll give them enough
Good.
time.
Yeah, which is good because that's right on track with that.
Okay, now we're going to hear that same situation, but what would it sound like to someone that has mild hearing loss? Or what does it look like too?
A project that I'm doing to make sure that all the tenants are knowing about what the parking.
Yeah.
The parking.
Yeah, because we got a lot of restriping to do.
Yep.
We've got some repairs to
And-
do from the winter.
Give him a call, ask him if he would get in there February 15th.
I'll do that.
Will do.
Oh, that sounds good. That'll give them.
Yeah, and now we're going to play it with moderate hearing loss so we can see what it looks like and how it sounds.
Good.
Yeah, which is good because that's right on track with a project that I'm doing to make sure that all the tenants are knowing about what the parking. The parking.
Yeah, because we got a lot of restriping to do.
Yep.
We've got some repairs to
And-
do from the winter.
Okay,
Ask him if he would get in there February 15th.
I'll do that.
all right, we can pause. You can see it's becoming more and more difficult. And with severe hearing loss, what does that look like and sound like?
So that'll give them enough
Good.
time.
Yeah, which is good because that's right on track with a project that I'm doing to make sure that all the tenants are knowing about what the parking. The parking.
Yeah, because we got a lot of restriping to do.
Yep.
We've got
All right, thank you so much for giving us that experience. We'll click back to the PowerPoint. So before we go to the next slide, I just want to talk about this a little bit more. I always think whenever we can experience something for ourselves, I'm always hoping that it will increase our empathy and our compassion and understanding, because I really think that's what people want. They just want to be understood. And so hopefully, again, if you're thinking about someone that you know or that you care about that has hearing loss, you'll think, wow, I know my family, when they heard this, they had no idea that's what it was like. A lot of people just think, oh, a couple times in the day, you miss things here or there. But we miss the sounds of speech. So every sentence, every paragraph, all day long, we're not getting it all. So our brain is working diligently to put together a puzzle, and it's tiring. So that's why it's so important that all of these strategies that for people to be aware of, whether you're hearing or hard of hearing, and just spread the word. And the more people that know about it, the better. Okay, next slide, please. So it's always important to have humor. It always helps. And I love this cartoon. I was looking through, there's a lot of them out there, but I found this one, and I think it's a couple, and the wife says, I think you need a hearing test. And the husband responds, why the heck do I need a hairy chest? And I love this because this is exactly what happens, truly. People will say to me, I'll respond. I mean, obviously I'm not going to have a hairy chest, but I'll respond sometimes to somebody and they'll say, well, and they might be frustrated and say, well, if you didn't hear me, why don't you just let me know? And I will have to remind them, my brain plugs things in. So I think I heard you. I thought I heard what you said, because again, all day long, sounds are missing, consonants are missing. And most people have high frequency hearing loss, maybe not as severe as what I have, but so most people are missing consonants. So it can really be a challenge. And our brain will plug things in. If someone just comes out of the blue and says something, we might think, oh, and we'll respond. So we have a lot of bloopers as hard of hearing people. And it's really important to keep our sense of humor. All right, next slide, please. So I'm going to read this because it's so important and there's really no better way to say it. But if you are hard of hearing, it's so important to know about the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA. This was signed into law on July 26 back in 1990, the year I graduated from college, by the way. And this is President George H.W. Bush. And I love this picture here. The ADA is one of America's most comprehensive pieces of civil rights legislation that prohibits discrimination and guarantees that people with disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else to participate in mainstream of American life. To enjoy employment opportunities, to purchase goods and services, to participate in state and local government program and services. It was modeled after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, and sex, or national origin. So, and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So the ADA is an equal opportunity law for people with disabilities. So I'm hoping that you'll all be aware of that and understand why it's so important. It's what protects us, really. And we're going to talk more about that in the next slide. So this is just a visual of the laws. As I said, the ADA is the Americans with Disability Act. And then we also have the Amendments Act and Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And again, this gives us the right to have equal access to goods and services, effective communication for the deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind, and also provision of auxiliary aids and services. And I'm going to tell you more about what that means on the next slide. First, before I do that, I put this slide in here because we all know what this is, right? We all know what these pictures mean. We see this all the time. And we all have different disabilities, and they're all impactful and important and meaningful. And when we see a curb like this, or a sign, or a ramp, we would never maybe show up to a doctor's appointment and say, I'm in a wheelchair, there's stairs, and they would say, oh, sorry, we didn't set the ramp up for you, right? That wouldn't be an answer, because we know what this is, and we know what needs to happen, and we're all familiar with it. So on the next slide, these things may not be as familiar, but they're just as important, because they're about, again, having that equal access and effective communication. So what does that mean? It might be as simple as a handwritten note or a really brief exchange. Maybe someone just needs you to write down a telephone number or an address, because it's really hard, again, to hear, for me, P, T, B, C, they all sound the same. So if you're going to verbalize your name, it's going to be really hard. If you give me your phone number, I might mix up 2 and 3. It can be difficult. Also, we all have, and the next picture, right? Most of us, I should say, have a smartphone. The smartphone can be a wonderful tool. There's a lot of apps available that you can download that provide automatic speech recognition, which is great for a brief exchange. It's important to know that there can be mistakes with automatic speech. So it's just good to watch what's being put out there by the artificial intelligence, just to be aware of that. We all have real-time text on our phone, or most of us do. Assisted listening devices is another important thing to know about. Even with my hearing aids, in certain listening situations and environments, I might use an FM system, and I can give the speaker a microphone, and then I can put a receiver around my neck, and then the sound will go directly into my ear. So that's really helpful. We have CART in the lower left-hand corner. We've already talked about that. Closed captioning, we see that a lot, especially, if we're in a public place, a doctor's office or a restaurant, and the TV's on, they really should have the captioning on too. So it's available, the information is available to everyone. RCC, if you want to check out our website, that's wonderful. Relay conference captioning is something that the commission provides for multi-party people at work who are in a multi-party conversation, and it's just difficult to follow on the phone. They can get that captioning that they need. Service animals are another great way to help people navigate their environment. I know my boss, Michelle, has her dog Gracie at home, and she has trained her to make sure to help her hear if the smoke detector is going off, or that maybe the oven is chiming and she doesn't quite catch it. The service animals can alert us. We also have a great list of resources on our website with service animals too. The blue box the T there stands for telecoil. And 80% of all hearing aids come with a telecoil. It doesn't mean they're always turned on, and also doesn't mean that people always know what they are. But it's a wonderful thing if you go to different entertainment venues or different churches or spirit houses of worship. A lot of them have loops, and you can sit anywhere in the venue or the church, and the microphone that the speaker is speaking into will go directly into your hearing aids because the room is looped. And then if you want to know more about this, I'm happy to tell you. One last thing, the visual signaling device here, the fire alarm or the strobe light there. So I have one right above my desk at work. And even with my hearing aids, oftentimes they're so high frequency, so I just don't hear it. And so if there's a strobe flashing, that gives me independence, and I don't have to rely on anybody else to exit the building safely. So that's really good to know about. All right, next slide, please. So one of the things I had in my title was equal access and effective communication. And before working for the commission, I'd heard of this, I'm sure I had heard of it, but I didn't really live it. I was and I think I really, coming onto the commission, I represent kind of an average hard of hearing person, because unfortunately, we may not know how to self-advocate. Most hard of hearing people don't have this information. If you ask them, what do you need to better communicate? They may be like, I'm not sure. So this is why it's so important to do the education, because people who have vision, hearing, or speech disabilities or communication disabilities, they may request accommodations. For example, people who are hard of hearing may request CART captions to obtain equal access and effective communication like I have today. And again, just the Americans with Disability Act requires that Title II entities, state and local government, and Title III entities, businesses and nonprofit organizations that serve the public, communicate effectively with people. So, it's just important to know about this. I have it all typed out, and if you have any questions, that's what we're here for. We get a lot of calls on this from people. I can't hear my doctor, he has a mask on. How do I get the information at my medical appointment? Most people have never heard of CART, but you can request CART, and the doctor has to provide that for his patient. But unfortunately, it's an education process. We have to educate not only the patient, but oftentimes the doctor's office, because people just don't know what they don't know. So we just do it with passion and kindness, and we're all a little bit of a teacher out there and working together. Okay, next slide, please. So this is my slide on communication strategies for the hard of hearing. And I hope that you'll take each one of these bullets and download them into your bag of tricks. And just, if you have anybody, this is going to change everything about communication if you know or care about someone who has hearing loss. It takes practice, because it isn't natural as when two hearing people are talking and running around the house and doing chores and talking to each other. It does change things up a bit, and it takes a little bit of work, but it's really worth it. So if you need to get the person's attention first, just say their name, and then they're looking at you, because if you say something, then say their name, they're going to miss it. So to look directly at the person, to have them see your face, wait a second, and then speak clearly and enunciate, and just slow down a little bit. Speak naturally. They're going to get it, but shouting doesn't help, because as you remember from the simulator, those sounds are missing. So even with shouting, those sounds are still missing. So the shouting is just going to make us go like this, especially if we have hearing aids. It's just going to be like, I still don't understand what you're saying, even though you're shouting. So speak clearly, slow down, enunciate. It's really going to help. If someone kind of looks at you and they're not sure what you said, or they say, what do you mean I need a hairy chest? And say, okay, wait a minute, let me just say it a different way. Let me rephrase it. Let me add some different information about what I'm talking about. that makes all the difference in the world. And again, if you're in a group and you're talking to someone who's hard of hearing, say if you're at the doctor's appointment, or if you are a doctor, hopefully you'll talk to that hard of hearing person. Don't leave them out of the circle and talk to the spouse. Keep them in the loop as best as you can. And no, it's not always easy, but if you have the strategies, it'll really help. Distance matters. More than 6 feet away, I'm not going to be able to understand you, and most hard of hearing people are not going to be able to understand you. It's just too far, and the sounds become even more distorted. Eliminate background noise and have excellent lighting on your face. I know I've mentioned the lighting a lot, but it's huge. Background noise. So I think of restaurants. I think of my last dental appointment. I was in the dental chair, and right above me, and I love my dentist, but they had piping music down, and it was some like really cool music too. But they were talking to me, they had masks on, and I'm like, is there any way you could turn the music off? That's all, my hearing aids are bringing in the music. I can't understand. So, and they're like, oh, we never even thought about that. People just don't know what they don't know. So again, just be mindful of any obstacles that may hide your mouth, whether it be a clipboard, whether it be if you're on a laptop, or if you're in the refrigerator and you're asking your hard of hearing husband in the living room what he wants for dinner. It's going to be really hard for them to get it. Use cart captioning. Again, this can be remote or in person. Smartphones for speech to text, for brief exchanges. It's just been wonderful for me. I've used that a lot during the pandemic. And I hope that you know that you can reach out to ACDHH, or the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and the Hard of Hearing, for information and resources. That's what we're here for. We do this all day long, and we all love it. All of us, that's what, most of us here all have some level of hearing loss, so we truly get it. Be mindful. Mask makes speech reading impossible. So it's been a hard couple of years with a mask, but I was just telling Lisa in the beginning, there's been a lot of silver linings. We've kind of all catapulted onto Zoom, and we figured it out. I think being hard of hearing, we're great problem solvers. There's a lot of positives. When you have a disability, it's all not doom and gloom. I mean, you really build you up in a lot of other ways, and you learn to be compassionate of other people. You have a lot of patience, problem solving. You're loyal oftentimes, because, it can be really hard to get a job or be in a place where people don't understand. So once you have it, you want to do your best for sure. And I hope you'll reach out to me anytime with questions. I think the next slide has just what we do here, just a little summary. We do outreach and education. We have information and referral. Empowerment is so important. We give people information so that they themselves can feel empowered. We do community development. We train the local police departments, healthcare facilities, and we also do employment training so that we can help people navigate work better. We have the telecommunication relay service so that people have that equal access. I'd be happy to answer any questions on that. We have a wonderful program called the Telecommunication Equipment Distribution Program, free equipment for anybody that's hard of hearing. So amplified telephones, we have flashing devices and alerting devices. And so if you have any questions on that, I'm happy to help. And we also have the ASL interpreter licensure here. And so we're happy to be here. We love what we do. And again, anytime you have any questions, we hope you'll reach out. And I think the last slide, and I'm coming in just about in time. I want you to have all of my contact information, my email. Email is the best, but I do have a phone number, and I certainly return calls as well. Email is great. Again, we have a website here with our website, pretty amazing, has a ton of information. I hope you'll check it out. And I hope that you have some really good questions for me, or if you can think of a couple, that would be great. And if you have any feedback on my presentation, I would love to know what it is, because again, I share this with people all across the state of Arizona, and I want it to be the best possible that it can be. Thanks again for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Christy. That was fantastic. We do have a question in our Q&A chat.
Okay,
Go ahead.
great.
Read that to you. If you need telecoil and go to a concert or a play at the ATRS Center, how do they connect you to this? This person stopped going because they were struggling to understand dialogue and became really frustrated with it. Do you have to ask people or someone to, with your, let's see, do you have to ask your hearing aid supplier to turn it on?
Right. Yes, that's a great question. And I'm thinking they mean like if they're going to like a venue, like an entertainment or arts venue, and you want to be able to hear, because these are large spaces and it's very hard, but many of them do have loops. So the first thing that you want to make sure is, I can ask the person, is your T-coil, that you have a T-coil, and is it turned on and is it set correctly? And that would be something that you can talk to your audiologist about so that it's all ready to go. And then once it is, it's a matter of just being at the venue, and then each hearing aid might be a little different. Some people can do it on their phone. There's an app on their phone connecting, or some people have a switch on their hearing aid that they have to just click to put them in the telecoil loop. So some people's does automatically too. It depends on how it's set up. So if you ask your audiologist, they'll be more than happy to talk with you about that.
Terrific. Great. And if that it did not answer the question, I hope then the presenter or the person that posted will go back in and help answer or ask another question to help us clarify.
I wanted to add one thing about neck loops too. Michelle just sent me a chat and I appreciate that. If you're in different venues too, if they have a neck loop, you may need that to connect with your hearing aid. So it just depends on what the setup is and making sure that it's all ready to go. And then if you need a neck loop, you may need that to interact with your hearing aid as well. So that's also important. Yeah.
Okay. Now for someone like me that is not hard of hearing, I'll probably get there a couple of years though, since I've had 4 kids though. But if I'm helping set up an event, how would I know what a neck loop is, or what would I need to do to make sure my event is more inclusive?
Let me just, I'm gonna put it in gallery. Can you ask that question one? I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Repeat that one more time.
Right. You put up some slides earlier that help us think about what to do as far as remembering how we're going to communicate with people who may be hard of hearing, because as you said, this is something invisible. We don't see it unless someone identifies, and not everybody's willing to do that, which is fine. I don't want them to tell me unless they really need to hear what's going on. So if I'm presenting or making an event happen, how do I make sure I'm more inclusive for that event, that I don't leave the hard of hearing people behind?
I love that question. I think because the numbers are so high and there's so many, if you're having a big event, just always, you can assume there may be someone out there that even just has mild hearing loss, because even with mild hearing loss, it can be hard to hear if you're in a Zoom or whatever the venue may be. So if you just always have it available, especially online, it's something that's easy to do. Even if you don't have CART, if you at least have CART is the gold standard, but and someone could request that, but if you at least have the automatic speech set up so someone can turn that on, because a lot of times that's not even activated. You'll go onto a platform and people won't even have that available. So it's always nice to have the option for that. And then if you're in a venue in person, then it's just a matter of when you're, I think, advertising your event, please let us know if you need any accommodations with whatever materials are being put out there. And then hopefully someone will make that request. And then if you have any questions, contact us, or we'd be happy to, give you more information.
Do you know then, Christy, does CART work with nonprofits now? Because is CART itself a nonprofit organization or service for not just businesses, but for nonprofit organizations as well?
Well, CART is, there are independent CART providers or different companies that provide CART. We have a list of CART providers across the state. And it is something, it costs money. So it just depends on, the situation. And are you asking like if it's a situation where someone might not be able to afford CART? Is that what you're thinking? Or
Well, I'm thinking more or less in a broader term in our own organization here in Arizona for Toastmasters. Part of what we do is we have speech contests, and to our person who posted their previous question, this person stopped judging and entering evaluation contests because they could not hear the speaker or understand them. So if that's the case, I want to make sure, again, that we don't leave people behind. How can we make sure that we make our events, whether they're in person or online? Currently, they're still online, and I would hope to advocate then for a hybrid type of environment. But how do we make sure we don't leave those people behind? So that way, if you're not participating as a competitor and speaking competitively, then you can at least help with the judging part of it and writing out an evaluation or participating as far as that goes. So how do we make sure we don't leave them behind too?
well, it's important. It would be just, and Michelle's in the chat, and this is important to mention too. If you think about it, if someone is deaf and they request an interpreter, it's the same for someone who's hard of hearing requesting CART. So, because captioners are professionals, just like an ASL interpreter or for a Spanish language translation. So it's helpful to think about it that way. And as far as setting up so if someone's requesting it, I have a list of all the CART providers that are available. And I can definitely share that with you. It's actually, I think it's on our website, but I can email it to you too. And
Okay.
I don't know if Michelle has, I know Michelle might have any other ideas. I know she's not online, but she might put that in the chat. But I can definitely talk with you more. I can give you the CART providers information. And I know people, I think, again, just putting it on the material so that people know they can request accommodations. So, and I'm so glad that you're wanting to know not to, you don't want to leave people behind. You want them to have that effective communication and equal access. So we can, and that's what this is all about, is figuring out the way forward to make sure that happens. So that's great.
Thank you. Yeah, we want to make sure that we all communicate. We're all here together.
Yeah.
We all want to communicate, so why not? And that we talked about this before we started the webinar today. Some of my frustration was technology not catching up until, 2020 for some reason, where even our phones wouldn't do closed captioning. The browsers were trying to catch up. Are there any of these things that are still out there that are not helpful to the hard of hearing community that we should be aware of, maybe to either advocate that they change or to avoid because they're not?
Well, I'm just trying to think here.
I know that might be a loaded question, but I'm curious because it's very frustrating.
You're wanting to make sure, are there things that you shouldn't be doing?
Or shouldn't be using, honestly.
Or things that you shouldn't be using. Can you give me an example of like is there something that you've experienced as far as communication, something that you shouldn't be using?
I haven't yet. I know there's some browsers, like my preferred browser, Vivaldi, does not always do things in either closed caption, doesn't always read back to people who are sight challenged either. So I don't know if there's any of those technologies still out there that haven't caught up yet that we should maybe avoid and not use, or recommend these are the ones that work the best, like especially in a Zoom environment, what we should be using.
Yeah, I know that there are definitely different platforms that seem to be more user friendly with CART than others, and that's something that I can definitely send you. I know we tend to use Zoom, but I think more and more people are figuring it out, the different platforms, but we've not had any with Zoom. We've been really fortunate. That's what we train on, and we are able to add the CART provider real easily. I don't know if there's any, I don't know if Michelle knows. Let's see. I'm gonna look and see if she knows of any other. Okay, yeah.
And to follow up then too, for both you and Michelle, would CART work with Microsoft Teams or Google Meets?
So for Google Meets, we do Google Meets internally at work. And when we do that, we have the automatic speech recognition. But I want to say also with Google Meets that you could do, I mentioned relay conference captioning. So it just depends if you're on a multi-party conversation. Relay conference captioning is something that you can do where you can get a link and then have a real cart provider, but you can't put it inside like with Zoom right now. It's easy because the layout is so easy because the cart is right inside. Whereas with RCC, it's either a split screen or if you have two screens, it's on another screen. So it's a little bit more to juggle. But so there are certain platforms that are more friendly than others. I'm hoping over time, they'll get better. I think I saw, is there another? I wanted to be sure to say was there another question about, I just wanted the person that stopped attending, are they familiar with Audible Talkers Toastmasters? Because we do use captioning for that Toastmasters. So I didn't know, I just want to make sure that they knew that is an accessible group if that's something they wanted to try out, but they said they stopped attending Toastmasters. I think that's what the question said.
They had stopped attending both evaluation contests or even judging in some of the contests. So
that was just
there are
for
a lot
contests, not necessarily the group. Yeah.
That might be, although if that person wouldn't mind answering, are you familiar with Audible Talkers Toastmasters? And if not, could we introduce you to Audible Talkers Toastmasters? And then while we're waiting for this person to answer back, are there any other questions? Because I don't want to hog the time with Christy. I could talk to her all day about this. I just want to make sure everyone has this information. That's why we asked Christy to come on here. We want to make sure that since Toastmasters is working so hard to be inclusive, that we don't leave these people behind. There's just no reason to do that in technology.
You're welcome. I just wanted to mention one other thing. I did mention caption in my presentation. There is another link that I love, and it lists all of the options. There's apps now that you can download onto your smartphone. So when you're having a conversation, you can get captioning. And Caption is a live person. So if you're hard of hearing, you can download this app for free and it'll give you captions. And I use that for work when I'm working from home on my cell phone at work. And just to let you know, CART can be used, if not inside Teams or Meet, then on the external link. So that's just the thing to know. And for whatever reason, but with Zoom, it's inside. And again, because it's even like, there's so much going on because you're trying to read someone's face, lip read, and you're also trying to refer to CART. So it can be tricky if there's two screens and another link. But people, we do the best we can, and you figure it out.
It's true. That could almost be like multitasking.
Yeah, multitasking. That's what, and we figured it out. And the more you do it, the more it flows. It becomes a habit. And so, yeah. But
the person did respond back, Christy.
Oh, good.
We are welcoming Lynn from Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us today. She is not familiar with Audible Talkers and would like an email link to that club. She has her email in the question section of the chat. Do you have that, Christy?
Oh, wonderful. Let me grab that.
Okay, great. Then we will definitely
send so much. And I will, Lynn, it's so nice to meet you. And I will be sure to introduce you. If it's okay with you, I will share your email with Harry Wolf, who is our just wonderful leader of Audible Talkers. He began the whole journey, and I know he's going to be really excited to meet you. And I hope you'll join us in our next, just to try it out in our next group. And it's wonderful because we have captioning every single meeting, and we've just decided to stay virtual because, again, we go one at a time. We have the face, we have the captions. So it's really a wonderful experience. And it's really helpful. And we have people who are learning English in our group too. So it's not all hard of hearing, but it's all about communication and how we can access the meeting. So it's just great.
Well, she just brought up another question that I thought. Her clubs that she attends are both in English and Spanish. They have some that do that around English and Spanish. Spanish and French, I think she said. Yeah, French and Spanish. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
That makes me wonder, will Zoom translate to their language? Will Otter.ai, which is the software that Harry Wolf introduced me to, will that translate to their language, or is it strictly English bound?
That's a really good question. And that I'm sure that some of them do, but I can research it for you and find out. I don't want to say exactly because I haven't done it myself, but I do know, I actually have an app on my phone that will, one of my daughter's mother's, her friend's mother speaks Spanish. And so we've gotten together and she'll speak Spanish into the app and it turns it into English for me.
Wow.
So it's automatic. So, but we kind of laugh at it, but it lets us interact a little bit. So that's something to research and find out more about. And I don't know as far as Zoom and, automatic speech. It's amazing what's happening though, isn't it? As far as us all being able to connect.
Right. I'm thinking if not, then maybe some of these other language places like Duolingo, for example, it's spelled Duolingo, is an app. I think it's a software for your computer as well. But if they translate, because they work with people trying to learn different languages, there may be something in both for either hard of hearing, because you have to hear the language too. Otherwise, how are you going to know how to pronounce it? And the same thing then too, for people who are sight challenged, they may have something where they can work with them as well in both those categories. I'm just wondering.
Right. Yeah. It's a great question. I'll have to find out more about it. I know in high school, I remember I took 3 years of French and it was just not easy. And I don't know it's because, and I was so frustrated. I'm so excited about other countries and I love language, and I would love to travel, but I was so frustrated with myself. But now I understand I couldn't hear all the sounds. It's hard enough for me to hear English. But anyway.
Well, I am jazzed that you were able to come here today and talk with us. Thank you very much. We've had several people drop in. This was a great presentation. Thank you for your responses. This has been really well done, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time with your team to help us learn more about how we can communicate better with you by not doing some of the silly things that we're doing to cover our faces, not proper lighting or whatnot, which, we knew that was okay for Zoom. We just didn't know how it would impact other people who can't hear well. I never really realized that, honestly. I should have.
Yeah. And it just, and I think when we just have the information and we all have a little bit of a sense of humor about it, we can just always improve things. So that's what it's all about.
Terrific.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.